Hello everyone and welcome back to part 2 of our F1 Manager 24 preview. Yes, we're back today to dive into our first race in the all-new game. Of course, if you missed out on the video that went live on Wednesday, I would highly recommend going back and checking out. We kind of went through everything you need to do to set up your team within the game, and of course now we're going to be diving in to our first Grand Prix. So of course, yeah, everything will be explained sort of with the setup of your team in that first video, but today we have got a very, very big one. We're going to be taking it quite slowly, running through everything as we head into our first weekend of the new season there. As you can see immediately, we've had a couple of extra bits and pieces coming onto the team ready for the weekend, and as we head obviously to Bahrain, we have been given a absolute stack of information by Diego Laverno there as we head into the weekend. You know, safety car opportunities, how likely they are to appear, obviously how much time you're going to lose making a pit stop as well, and of course, you know, as you head to Sakir, it's going to be a really, really big weekend. You know, you want to try and build up your driver confidence as quickly as you possibly can. You can see Jared Murphy, he's not a fan of the drivers for some reason, so I don't quite know what he was expecting. I can't remember which team he's come from. But I mean, I personally think, yeah, Albon and Gasly aren't a particularly bad lineup as well. So as we head towards the weekend then, these are your race targets. So obviously we mentioned in that first video about the sponsors. So you get a bonus, obviously, depending on where they finish. You can either set an aggressive target of P10 in our case. P12 will see you getting kind of a middle reward. And then P14 or higher will see you get the lowest reward. So of course, you know, it's risk versus reward. You can take a big gamble, or obviously you can try and just, you know, hope to do decently well heading into a weekend. And you can see your other driver then does get a slightly altered one around that.
A new season is upon us as Formula One returns to the Middle East, ready to kick things off here in Bahrain. But change is afoot. The paddock has grown, the grid extended. Yes, that's right, 11 teams, 22 drivers, and the hottest competition motorsport has to offer. Williams are taking a gamble this weekend on a new driver, but you have to ask, will it pay off? Now let's crack on with the weekend.
Well, there we go then, Crofty just giving us some extra little bits of information as well, and you know, it's those little touches as well that just add a bit more storyline as you come into the weekend. Of course, yeah, where we poached Alex Albon from the Williams team, obviously they've now had to bring in another rookie driver for the second year in a row, so Logan Sargent suddenly is the experienced one within that team, which is probably a little bit nervous, I'm sure, down at the Williams organisation at the moment. Taking a look though at car setups, again, it's a pretty similar system to what we've had in previous years. Of course, it'll affect the driver confidence and their preparation as well. So we're going to try some different setups as we go through this first free practice session of the year there. Of course, I like to do basically try and set up each car to different parameters, send them out for a run, get the information, fine-tune it, send them out for another run, get the information, and then usually that gives me like 10 minutes left at the end of a session to really just try and make sure everything is as it should be. So we can see, taking a look up and down the grid though, we've actually got quite a lot of third drivers and reserve drivers this weekend. So Ferrari are using Leclerc and Sainz. Oscar Piastri's in the McLaren, but he's actually alongside, I think it was Hirakawa, I want to say his name is. Red Bull using the same. Fred Vesti alongside Lewis Hamilton down at Mercedes. We've got RVE, who I'll need to double check as we go through this one, in the second of the Alpine seats there. Zach O'Sullivan down at Williams, so he is their full-time driver for this season. Chloe Chambers as well. I had some of you guys asking about this. I don't know whether it's just her, or whether we've got all of the the Formula Academy drivers, but Chloe Chambers is in the game, so theoretically you could hire her further down the line, obviously. VCarb using their two drivers, Bottas and Pourchaire are down in the Kick Sauber team there, with Stoffel Van Dorn making a return down at Aston Martin in place of Fernando Alonso for the first free practice session of the year. So I was very surprised. I mean, we've basically got about half the teams are using different drivers heading into the weekend. I don't know Whether, of course, obviously now in real Formula 1, there is a rule obviously stipulating that teams have to use a rookie for at least 2 sessions a year. So, of course, for example, Williams and I would assume, obviously, also Alpine with... Oh, I will remember. It's Richard Verschoor, isn't it, of course. So, obviously, they won't have to do that because, of course, they'll have a rookie in the car. Throughout those first 2 weekends of the year, a bit like Williams saw, obviously, IRL in 2023, and obviously McLaren. But yeah, I think it's a really, really cool little feature as well, which is obviously, hopefully, has been added into the game. Of course, I did notice there were a couple of small little bugs and tweaks, of course, where the UI is still kind of optimized for 20 drivers. It seems to be like there's a couple of small little things you'll notice as well as we head into qualifying. That, yeah, it just needs some slight tweaking, but the dev team are aware of that and are looking, obviously, at getting it fixed, obviously, before the game comes out on July 23rd. Yes, we have a confirmed release date as well, which is very, very exciting. But yeah, we're going to kind of, sit back, relax as well as we head into free practice. I know some of you guys, for example, I've seen comments before of people saying they literally like to just kind of sit back and watch an entire race weekend go by. Personally, I'm ever so slightly impatient for doing that. And of course, obviously, in this video, I was under constraints as well, obviously, to try and make sure that we had everything as it should be there. As you can see, Gasly just getting informed by the team that everything is as it should be in the car as well. So as we just slowly start heading forward then, we'll try and take a look actually at some point at some of the various camera angles. As you can see, going to try and start getting some laps on the board now. Obviously, one of the quite cool features last year was obviously the introduction of helmet cam, so driver's eye. Made me quite motion sick, I must admit, but I do also think, it was a fantastic feature to implement in the game. This year, we've actually got like a new heli cam, which I think is really, really cool as well. And I think especially when you're having battles in a race, are going to make things quite interesting as well. So yeah, you can see now we've got, how many options? We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 different camera angles. Of course, in the car there, as you can see, taking a look. I was actually trying to see, because I hadn't actually spotted it at the time. But yeah, Chloe Chambers, as you can see, in that car. And it is Richard Verschoor in the Alpine as well, that I knew I would remember at some point during this session. But you can see, obviously, you've got the standings, you've got lap history, tyre history, events and reports. So much information. As I've said before, F1 Manager, they do it fantastically. There is so much information in the game that, you can really nerd out if you feel that way inclined. But of course, yeah, we're slowly sort of cycling around different drivers as the session goes on. Interestingly, clearly there's, I believe, too many drivers in the game. Or obviously too many drivers that overlap in the game. So I think all of the reserves and things like that are given the number 01. So Max Verstappen, I'm sure, not happy with the way that encroaches in on his number. But yeah, very, very interesting to see there. As you can see, Fred Vesti doing some laps out in the Mercedes car as well. Of course, their junior driver no longer in F1 Formula 2. The same for Théo Pourchaire, of course, who's recently signed up to IndyCar for the rest of the year. I think Fred Vesti is still running LMP2s or something like that in World Endurance. But of course, yeah, we get to take a bit of a look at some of the various cars throughout this session as well. Then, as you can see, Albon, yeah, not too happy with the car in the first run, so we'll bring them both back into the pit lane and we'll try and get that all tweaked before we head into the second phase of this free practice session. Anyone that's kind of watched me play these games in the past will know I tend to just do free practice 1, kind of let the AI simulate through 2 and 3, just so they get a better idea of what is going on. But honestly, I feel like 9 times out of 10 I can fine-tune the setup pretty well, pretty quickly as well there. So we'll take a look at what Gasly is saying there. You can see it's the same system as last year, so knowing me, I'll have to spend about 5 minutes now just kind of looking at dials, trying to just fine-tune everything. I wish that the session didn't pause when you were doing all this. I think it should actually count to your time. And obviously, if you want to pause the game, you can do. But yeah, I think they should, this should be, the clock is still ticking whilst you're fine-tuning these setups. Because, of course, that's what happens in IRL Formula 1. Obviously, you do then have to spend time with the game obviously applying those changes to the car, which obviously I still think is a fantastic feature. You can see they're tweaking around a few things, and obviously we'll let some more of the AI get some laps in. You can see Stoffel Van Dorn, 1.5 seconds clear of Lance Stroll so far in free practice. So maybe if you want to do an Aston Martin team save, Stoffel is going to be the man to have immediately in your car there. As you can see, Harakawa as well, a second clear of Oscar Piastri. And of course, obviously, with the new affiliate driver feature as well, that's going to make things very, very interesting, of course. Say, for example, as I said, you've got an older driver lobbing, your new rookie in a load of free practice ones throughout the course of the year to potentially get them up to pace. I think is going to be really, really exciting as well. There is just under 40 minutes left on the clock then. We're going to head back out onto the circuit. We're going to try and take a look at some point soon as well, if I remember to take a look at the new camera angles there, as hopefully, obviously we don't really get a good idea of it in free practice, but we should be able to get a look at the various the blue flags. How are blue flags fixed on this year's game? They were better inside F1 Manager 23, but they were still not perfect then, as we simulated right the way through that second stint as well. Drivers, again, feeling more confident with the car. You can see that we're slowly slipping down the order, but we have only done runs on the harder compounded tyres so far. So you can see Ferrari really trying to set the pace there. But yeah, Alex, we've managed to get a couple of things pretty good. I believe it runs on a similar scale to bad, okay, satisfactory, great, and perfect, I want to say. So obviously if you can get everything perfect, then you've done a really, really good job, but sometimes it just isn't possible. As you can see, here we go. Now I've got to try and fine-tune everything to try and get it inside kind of the range that obviously you want it in. Of course, the closer you get to perfect, the smaller those ranges become, and obviously it just allows you to try and really fine-tune the setup as well. And as taking a look, you can see Albon, we've got a couple of goods. Unfortunately, the traction was still lacking as well, so we're just going to have to try and make some other tweaks there as well. And you can see we'll pretty much get that fine-tuned where I'm happy with it as well on Alex Albon's car. So yeah, we'll continue pushing forward towards the end of this first free practice session, get both cars back out for a final last-ditch attempt there. But you see Chloe Chambers, 0.02 of a second slower than Nico Hülkenberg. That is really impressive early on for, I believe, her first ever test in a Formula 1 car as well. But yeah, you can see Albon and Gasly ready to go. So we're going to bolt one onto a set of soft compound tyres, do a bit of a glory run towards the end of the session, just make sure everything is as it should be. And of course then hopefully we're going to rocket our way up the order so we have a bit more confidence as you head into qualifying, because of course the more confident your drivers are, the better they're going to perform, and that of course is always fantastic as well there. So we'll slow it down, I believe. At some points we can try and sort of watch them on some runs. You can see Gasly getting a little bit caught up behind Stoffel Van Dorn, who is still flying around the circuit, best of anyone that isn't in a Ferrari at the moment. Albon immediately rockets up into P8 towards the end of the session, going quicker than Yuki Tsunoda. Always weird, I find Albon and Tsunoda never have been teammates in Formula 1, but I always just think they have been, as Gasly unable to really get any clear air at this stage. And you can see, just getting some warnings about tyre temps as well. Obviously, in the desert here in Sakhir, can be quite difficult to try and manage them early on. As, tucked up behind his former car is Alex Albon there. I believe that is Logan Sargent just in front of him. As, we're just getting towards the end of free practice, of course. Having a good look through. As you can see, Albon now within a second of the Ferrari's time. So, considering we've got bad backmarker car, we've not done too badly as we head into this weekend there as well. And you can see, as we get to the end of the session, Gasly even improves up to P12 as well. So Albon certainly had the pace over him by the end of the session there. You can see Sainz fastest ahead of Leclerc and Lando Norris. Fernando Alonso, I don't believe it factors in, for whatever reason. It didn't factor in Stoffel Van Dorn in the session. I haven't noticed that until now. It did the same with Zhou Guanyu, so I don't think it does with any of the rookies. It just puts the old driver into their seat. But of course, Roman Stanek, sorry, not Zach O'Sullivan, Roman Stanek in the Williams car. And yeah, like we said, obviously, richer for sure in the Alpine throughout the course of this year. So yeah, going to be interesting to see how those two get on in their first race of the season as well there. But yeah, as we try and head forward though into qualifying, so obviously let Karun and Crofty have a bit of a word.
Important qualifying session.
Bahrain's track is dusty and abrasive, and even under the floodlights, qualifying is tough on soft tyres. Teams will need to use their tyre allocations wisely.
Charles Leclerc has been a talking point for many of late. Karun, how do you think he's doing so far?
They were looking pretty sharp in practice and setting good lap times, so they're probably feeling fairly confident now. But a good practice time doesn't always guarantee a strong qualifying outcome.
Well, we're certainly ready in the commentary box. The drivers are getting ready down in the pit lane, and it's time for qualifying.
I'm interested to know your guys' opinions, because I do think F1 Manager's graphics are weirdly very good in kind of like an odd little way that I can't describe. I think especially for a management game, you know, they absolutely do the trick. But I was sort of just looking at like the shadows underneath the car and things like that. You know, the level of detail still on this game is very, very impressive there. But heading straight out then into Q1, of course, we've really not got too great an idea as to where the performance of the car is going to be this weekend. I think coming into the weekend, we had like the 11th and 13th best car. So clearly we're kind of right there with kind of the top of the, well, really the top of the back markers, isn't it? Again, the joys of a Formula 1 world where it's kind of two halves, isn't it, still, at the end of the day. As you can see, yeah, Albon and Gasly both desperately trying to get some heat into the tyres as we get ready for the first run here of the all-new season. Of course, the very first ever run of 212 Motorsports inside F1 Manager. It is exciting, you know, it is quite cool. I can't wait for the full game to drop in less than 2 months' time now, I believe, as well. So obviously we're going to be playing a lot of that down the line. And here we go then. This is a look at the all-new Helicam as well. So basically, obviously, you know, it does what it says on the tin. You kind of just follow your driver around a little bit. We'll cycle through, you know, all of the other cameras, so everything else is the same as it has been in previous years. But yeah, Helicam, I think, is a really, really cool little addition. You know, like I said, especially when you're having on-track battles with other drivers, you know, it'll give you a better understanding as to what is going on, and you know, you can obviously try, well, for me, it'll be yell at my drivers more when they still are making moves that they need to be. So yeah, we'll ride with Albon during this lap. You can see it does slightly pan out the high speed you're going, and then of course dive back in for a closer shot, obviously at the lower speed stuff as well. So, you know, I don't know whether, of course, that'll you know, when AI are battling and that kind of thing as well, whether it'll do anything sort of more dynamic with that. But it is very, very cool. As you can see, Gasly already just losing out a little bit of time to Alex Albon so far on this lap. Maybe the Williams driver just getting a little bit of slipstream, or of course just feeling a bit more confident with the car underneath him as we head into this weekend. Of course, you know, your first few races, you are gonna have to learn, you know, where your advantages lie, where your strengths and weaknesses are. As Gasly yelling about traffic, so one of the Williams there clearly getting in his way. And yes, AI that swear, obviously it is bleeped out. But they are still in this game, which I always think is quite funny as well, because I believe this game is only a 7 or a 3. So that's always quite funny still, you know, especially for you know, the more mature audiences. I would love to see like an 18+ mode. That would be quite funny. You know, your drivers just swearing at each other or swearing at you, that kind of thing. But I understand. Maybe modders are going to have to deal with that a little bit further down the line. But yeah, Gasly making his way out of the final corner. You can see Alonso has currently set the pace on a 1 minute 30.8. Gasly is going to do a 1 minute 32.3. As you can see, Albon actually goes 6/10 faster into the high 31.7s. So yeah, good time by Alex Albon early on. Gasly not so happy with the time he has set. As you can see, Leclerc then immediately goes half-second clear, and Verstappen goes 7/10 faster than the Ferrari. Yes, the performance of the AI is still very, very strong there. As you can see, other drivers having some incidents throughout the session. We don't need to see Lance Stroll bottle it, to be completely honest. They exceed 10 seconds off the pace for Lance. That's probably one of his better qualifying sessions over the course of the year. But yeah, Gasly now starting to get a little bit closer to the drop zone than I would like. I don't really know like I said, kind of where we're aiming for in this session. So we're just going to kind of try and see where both drivers end up. You can see we've got both Kick Sauber's George Russell down in the drop zone at the moment, so surely he's going to improve by the end of qualifying 1 there, as we're going to head back out onto the circuit. We'll take a quick look at the Kick Sauber car. Maybe, just maybe, I could do a career mode with them at some point down the line. Stream it exclusively on Kick and pull 3 viewers, I don't know. But yeah, you can see there's quite a lot of pace discrepancy. This was one of the things I'd certainly noticed as well. You know, whereas like a real Formula 1 qualifying session in Q1, most of the cars are split by a second and a half. But clearly in this game it is a little bit more spread out, perhaps creates kind of a little bit more dynamic and unpredictability in terms of the session. But yeah, I think obviously that is still yet to be tweaked, of course, before the game comes out. As you can see, we've got a traffic paradise at the top of the hill. We'll stay with Albon, I believe, for this second run there, as Gasly holding up absolutely everybody through this middle sector. He's got one of the Red Bulls and I believe one of the Alpines behind him, so 2 of his former teams. Gasly is trying to hold up here as Yuki Tsunoda in the V-Carb car just gets on the loud pedal too early and is going for a little bit of a spin. There you go, Yuki Tsunoda. Very, very enthusiastic in his apologies as well. There, yeah, yellow flags have now been removed, so as we get ready then to go for our final lap, we've messed this up terribly because we are still in the wheel tracks of one of those Red Bulls and the Alpine car. The Red Bull is going to be able to go around the outside down at turn 1, but are we going to be able to make anything happen as well here? We might just have screwed ourselves over, especially if other drivers are going to improve towards the end of the session. You can see Hulkenberg is on the verge of the drop zone, but Gasly is only a couple of tenths clear of him. You can see as well, of course, obviously because we got 22 cars now, it is top 16 that make it through and into Q2, so it will only be your bottom 6, of course. 6 knocked out in Q1, 6 knocked out in Q2, to still leave you with 10 at the end of the session there, as George Russell improves up into P12. Not a fantastic lap time by the Mercedes, but his teammate Lewis Hamilton only a few tenths clear, and you can see, yeah, both of those V-Carb cars up inside the top 10 here as well, as Verstappen 6 tenths clear of Perez, Leclerc ahead of Norris and Piastri, with Carlos Sainz down in P6. Are we going to see Albon make a move on the Alpine? Yes, he is. So hopefully we're going to be quicker than them, and with Ocon and Richard Verschoor way down the order, that bodes well for us that we should be able to beat both Alpines here in the first qualifying session of the season then, as everyone coming towards the end of their laps as the clock strikes down to 0. Other Alpine out of the way, so we have got the better of them. I think we should at least get one of our cars straight into Q2 then, as is Gasly going to be able to improve up from P15. Zhou Guanyu hasn't gone quicker than him, so I think we are safely through. Gasly goes up into 11th place, so on a 1.7 seconds off the pace. Albon, of course, yeah, in that traffic, unable to improve at the end of Q1. As you can see, Hulkenberg there launches himself ahead of Logan Sargent, but will the Williams driver make it through into Q2? He is on a lap himself, I believe, as Valtteri Bottas as well, one of the other ones still looking, trying to improve. I don't think we're going to see Roman Stanek making his way into that second session either. So, I mean, yeah, Logan Sargent nearly 2 seconds clear of his teammate early on here. A lot of the rookies really are struggling, but Verschoor has gone quicker than Ocon, which I think is rather impressive as well. But yeah, running on board with Bottas, using the helicam down in towards the final corner of the lap. Is he going to be able to improve any higher than P19, the number 77 car? He will go into P17, so misses out on Q2 by half a second there, and it is both Kick Saubers, the Williams of Roman Stanek, who actually improves up to 17th in the end, so quicker than both those kit cars. Both Alpines and the Haas of Kevin Magnussen all out in Q1 there. So an interesting first session of the year. Pretty close to what we would, I'm sure, expect to see as well from a real-life session. And yeah, Max Verstappen, Perez did improve at the end there to get a bit closer to his teammate, but still not close enough, as yeah, there you go, your bottom 6 out in Q1. Let's head then into Q2. So I'm not too sure we're going to be able to make it into Q3. So you can see Gasly there immediately sets a 131.6 So about 1.5 seconds off the pace set by Carlos Sainz. We're still waiting to see whether anyone that isn't in a Red Bull is going to be able to go under the 1 minute 30 mark. As speaking of which, Max Verstappen immediately goes back to the top of the board. Albon as well crosses the line. Again, 4 tenths behind his teammate there after the first run. So, yeah, I thought Albon was going to be a little bit quicker here. And you can see both drivers then down in the drop zone at the moment. So let's head out then onto their second laps. We'll just wait and see if we can try and squeeze one of them into Q2 there. Once again, those V-Carb cars clear of Lando Norris and George Russell here. I mean, surely we're going to see Lando improve and see himself into Q3. Oscar Piastri is almost a second faster, and we would expect Lando to be the better of the two. Yes, both our drivers then start their final last-ditch attempt to see if we can try and get 2 and 2 Motorsports into Q3 for the first time ever. Hamilton down towards the drop zone there as Lance Stroll bumps his way up inside that top 10 and comfortably ahead of Tsunoda and Hamilton there. That puts Ricciardo into the drop zone, and he's not on a lap, so Ricciardo and Logan Sargent then guaranteed out of this session. We're hoping that Albon can take a little bit of slipstream from Pierre and maybe get them both, you know, if we can get both sort of inside the top 10, I'd be ecstatic. If we can get them sort of just on the cusp as well, I would probably be rather happy with that. We only need to find about 4 more tenths of a second, which is probably quite a lot, actually, with the pace these two are setting at the moment there. Perez gets within a quarter of a tenth of his teammate there, so Red Bull, there might be a fight at the front in Q3, and you can see Charles Leclerc there does dip into those 1 minute 29s as well. So sub 90-second lap time for Charles Leclerc. That's pretty good going here as we get towards the end of the session. But Pierre Gasly then, it's been a pretty tidy lap, but not particularly fantastic. Albon has certainly rocked up to the rear of his teammate here. Verstappen sets the benchmark even lower at the front of the order. Lando Norris improves up to P6 and into safety, but we need to find 6 tenths of a second if we want to knock Yuki Tsunoda out here in Q2. You can see Albon desperately trying to get all the slipstream he can from Gasly. Gasly will stay in P14, but Albon's made it through. Albon goes clear of Lewis Hamilton and Yuki Tsunoda at the end of the session. And for the first time ever inside F1 Manager then, we have made it into Q3, sorry. Things you love to see for Formula One's newest team there, and that means we join both Red Bulls, both Ferraris, Astons, McLarens, Stroll, and Lewis Hamilton there. So Russell having a bit of a stinker down in P13. Not the start to the new year he would have wanted, slower than both of those V-Carb cars there, but very, very happy with that. And I mean, really now, anything higher than P10 as we head into Q3 is basically just a consolation prize at this point, as we'll make our way through this final session there. You can see Albon, pretty good lap, a 1:30.8. That's actually a very good lap time. I think that's his best so far of the entire weekend. You see slowly as the times improve there. We're still beating out a few drivers, one Aston, one McLaren and one Mercedes. So I reckon we could still beat Lewis by the end of this session as we head out into the second runs. You know, I'm expecting Alonso and, there we go, Lando Norris instantly to improve here. But as the clock strikes down towards 0, are we going to see Alex Albon setting any quicker times? To be honest, I completely forgot that obviously we can monitor these times as we go through the session there. As Piastri unable to improve, will stay in P6. So Norris in a Ferrari sandwich, Carlos Sainz in a McLaren sandwich, depending on how you look at it there. And now Verstappen, 6 tenths clear at the top of the board. We are going to out-qualify Lewis Hamilton, though, so ahead of the 7-time world champion in just the team's very first Formula 1 session. Fernando Alonso making his way, I believe, out of the final corner as well. And no, that's Lance Stroll, who bumps his way up into P4 at the end there. Sainz goes up into P2, going clear of Sergio Perez. Leclerc will go even faster onto a 1 minute 29.5 there. Verstappen improves again to lower that benchmark even more. Will Perez be able to get a faster time on the board? There is everyone improving around us. Could we go quicker than Oscar Piastri if Albon has absolutely nailed this lap up to the line? No, we do not. We do improve, but we stay P9 at the end of the session there. So not a bad little time. All the pressure on Sergio Perez as he rounds his way out of the final corner, though. Are we going to see the Mexican get himself back up onto the front row after everyone else has improved? Yes, we will. 3/10 away from his teammate, but he does out-qualify Charles Leclerc. And that is going to leave us with a Red Bull front row, a Ferrari second row, an Aston Martin third row, and a McLaren fourth row at the end of the session there. So very, very exciting. And you can see, yeah, unlike previous games where the AI's pace kind of moves around between each sessions, kind of sometimes they go quicker, sometimes they go slower. It does look like here that they do consistently ramp up as the session goes on. Of course, mistakes can come in, but they do seem to do a much better job with it in this year's game. But let's head into the Grand Prix.
Here in Sakir, the floodlights are on, and it's nearly time for 57 laps around the Bahrain International Circuit.
Bahrain has seen some of the most dramatic races in F1, like Sergio Perez's incredible 2020 victory, surging ahead from being last on the opening lap.
Bahrain International Circuit was Formula One's first venue in the Middle East, and is still a calendar favourite. Dusty and challenging, this desert track is a real test of endurance for teams and for drivers. It's race day, with the teams and drivers ready and raring to go.
Well, here we are then, taking a look at the strategy ahead of 57 laps here of the Bahrain Grand Prix. I must admit, I do quite like being forced into doing the 100% races on this game, but I think it would be nice to have the option of potentially doing 50% races down the line. I just wonder how it affects kind of, you know, strategy and things like that in the game. And obviously, you know, you can just fast forward through if you're that worried there. 16 times speed, you'll get it done pretty damn quick. As well. But yeah, taking a look then at the strategy, of course. You know, we've been playing some F1 Manager 23 over on Twitch recently, so we know that strategy is going to be important. And also, you know, you can make a 3 or a 4 stop work inside this game as well. Tyre wear is extreme.
As 11 teams line up on the grid. The anticipation and excitement may be building up, but there's a cool head on Carlos Sainz.
It's a second row start there in P4. The trick will be not to slip backwards because there are plenty looking to capitalize.
Right, let's get to it then. This is it. 22 cars on the grid. And it's lights out, and away we go.
There we go, pretty clean, tidy start as Crofty making sure to emphasise the new larger grid ready for the new year. But as we make our way down in towards turn 1, Charles Leclerc immediately gets past Sergio Perez, even Fernando Alonso trying to have a look. There is a bit of Constantina and up on the inside of that first corner. I believe Albon has made the move on Oscar Piastri off the start there. As you can see, Gasly are getting a little bit caught up, battling with Nico Hülkenberg. But yeah, good little move at the start of the race then for Alex Albon, trying to get himself into the thick of it here as Sainz has had an absolute disaster of a start, losing both the place to Lando Norris and Fernando Alonso here. So we're just going to have to try and obviously manage things early on, work out how much you want to try and push with each driver and see how things pan out as we move into the GP. Of course, you know, you've got to be a bit patient on this game. You know, you can't try and go all guns blazing at the start of these races. Often I find it's just a little bit better you know, to kind of just pace yourself early on, unless you've got like a front-running car and you can break out the DRS. Sometimes, you know, it is a bit key just to try and hold station there. As you can see, by the end of lap 1, though, Verstappen already with a 2-second lead. So that seems pretty realistic with what we would expect from this game. There is everyone else behind him caught up squabbling. Yeah, Max Verstappen, I'm pretty certain he does go on to win this race pretty comfortably as well there. As you can see already, though, trying to apply some pressure down the inside of Lance Stroll on just lap 2. So we've actually got some very good race pace in this car there early on, and making a move on the Canadian. As you can see, Albon very, very happy with that. Of course, we still get all of those authentic radios as well in this game, so always quite cool to see as well. But yeah, Albon up to the lofty heights of P7. Gasly struggling a little bit more here off the start of the race, still down in P15. So he's got his work cut out if we want to try and get him into the points this afternoon. But of course, safety cars, we know now there's a 44% chance of a safety car. You lose 25 seconds if you pit under green. You only lose 9 if you pit under that safety car. So all that information, you've got to keep it stored in your head as well there, as you can see. Unfortunately, maybe just early on, we bit off a bit more than we could chew. Albon locked into battle now with Lance Stroll, as once again, actually, just lost the place. Stroll going to give him a real squeeze at the top of the hill, but he will make it back through there, and of course, you still get all those action cams as well on this game, as we get a nice view behind. Lance Stroll there, moaning that he's not got enough talent, clearly, in Formula 1 as well. But yeah, I mean, if we can try and keep Stroll at bay there, we've got Roman Stanek just behind us for Pierre Gasly. So we've enabled the ERS battle assist for Pierre to kind of hopefully let him focus on trying to move his way up the order. Because kind of my logic was, if Albon can kind of just keep as many of those cars behind or squabble with them, maybe we could try and go for a bit of an odd strategy. You know, undercut Sergio, undercut Pierre, or something like that. As you can see, I'm going to look to the outside now of the Haas car. Clean around the outside of Nico Hülkenberg we go at the top of the hill there. And that is a beautiful move made by Pierre Gasly early on here. So clearly, you know, it seems like they've put a lot more effort into how the AI can overtake now on this year's game. You know, we obviously seen Albon going down the inside there. But Pierre Gasly, a beautiful little switchback at the top of the hill there, looks to the inside, brakes early, and then gets to the outside of Hülkenberg and is able to use those soft compound tyres to carry the momentum the long way round there. And it's those little things, you know, like I said, I really feel like they put an emphasis this year on longevity, you know, getting people on the game and keeping them interested. And it's those little things that I think are going to make a world of difference as well there, as we've actually been able to tuck up inside the DRS range of Lando Norris. So can we just try and sit with him and potentially capitalise here? As obviously, once again, just like we've seen on previous games, ERS battery usage is going to be really, really critical. It's a shame you haven't got an option just to use slightly more battery. But, you know, I guess it is what it is. And obviously, you can't really do that too much in IRL Formula 1 either. But yeah, we need to just try and stay in the DRS of Lando early on here. With Alex Albon, of course, try and keep those other cars at bay as best as possible here, as Gasly now is pulled away from those cars behind, so he's just going to be able to get some laps in under his own devices and potentially close in on those cars in front, as named Yuki Tsunoda trying to make a move on ourselves as well there. So despite the fact we got the DRS, despite the fact Albon goes defensive, Tsunoda dead set on making that move down at the first corner. Albon squeezes him, but has to give him room in the end, and Tsunoda will squeeze through and up into P8. Yuki less happy about that, or less extreme about that, than he was about his spin in qualifying. So, yeah, it is interesting, of course, obviously, like I said, you know, there will be some tweaks and changes to the performance of the AI, but VCarb look very, very competitive in this mod, which I think is quite cool there, as Stanek and Pierre Gasly now locked into battle. What does Stanek do? A pretty simple DRS pass down the inside, so he's having a pretty good debut, actually, after a decent qualifying session, only a couple of tenths away from Logan Sargent. He's making moves early on throughout the afternoon as well. So Gasly, we need to try and get him free. We need to try and get him into some breathing room. You know, he's obviously trying to work hard, but he is not making the progress up to that big gaggle of cars and that we were hoping he could there, as Tsunoda now breaking free, as that's a big dive bomb by Pierre Gasly down to that first corner. He'll make it work. Albon as well making moves up the road. So it is all going on still very, very early on in this race. As Albon, yeah, trying to hang on there, but Tsunoda's just walked off from this group further behind there. So we've got a 3-second gap to the car in front. For him, a 3-second gap for Pierre as well to the car in front of him here. So it is all kicking off still early on in this GP. And of course, yeah, you do kind of find this, that a lot of races inside this game are very, very dramatic at the start. And then obviously kind of settle down later on. Obviously, as everyone kind of finds their own pace, strategy comes into play. And kind of everyone then can work from there. So we'll just head forward, see Logan Sargent making a little bit of a mistake. Just going to run a bit deep there down in towards turn 10. Sorry, turn 11 even. So not ideal for him, as Magnussen, I think, as well, has made an even bigger error and is now down to the rear of the field. But yeah, Gasly just cannot seem to shake Stanek and Zhou Guanyu, so I think he's kind of dragging them along as we try to and sort of bring them all a bit closer to George Russell a little bit further up the order as Lando Norris again another move made, and this is what's so great about the helicam. You can see we're watching as Roman Stanek tries to make a move around the outside down at turn 1, unable to complete that one as Norris makes yet another move on Alex Albon, and Alex Albon will make yet another move on Lando Norris at the top of the hill here. Like I said, we really are just trying to keep everyone bunched up as best as possible. As Tsunoda, he's up to P5. He's beaten a Ferrari in this Grand Prix. He is having a fantastic run early on this afternoon, and you love to see it for Lil Yuki there. And that means, I mean, what we've got, 5 cars from 4 different teams up inside that top 5 there. Fernando Alonso doing a miraculous job so far with that Aston Martin up in P2, trying to go one better than he did in 2023. But yeah, now just trying to see if we can get Stanek out of the range. Unfortunately, they gained so much, of course, in the DRS zones, as Albon, we just see they're losing a little bit of confidence as well. But now we've got Stanek out of the range. You can see Albon gets again overtaken by Lando, so they are just battling each other all over the town. But yeah, Gasly cannot pull away from Stanek early on in this GP, so starting to get a little bit desperate with what we do with Pierre here. We might have to try and box him a little bit early or go for something aggressive there, as Albon now loses the place to Piastri and Lando Norris and has dropped back a little bit. So I think just slowly but surely, you know, those teams with a bit more pace starting to utilise it a bit more. As Gasly feeling happy with his tyres at the moment, despite the fact they are very, very warm. He's got slightly more life left in them than Alex Albon does on the other side of the garage. But they are both doing pretty well here early on. I mean, if we could score some points with either driver, I'd be very, very happy with that. There is immediately we lose another place to Lance Stroll. I feel like we've got the pace to match him, though, this afternoon. Gasly now has finally closed in to the Mercedes as well. As you can see, Stroll with a bit of a dangerous move into the braking zone, but luckily Albon able to make it happen nonetheless, and will re-inherit that P9 position there. And Crofty, of course, filling us in with all the information as well. I know it's really only a case for me, but I would quite like to sort of see you have the option of disabling the in-race commentary, simply because I do it myself, but I get for a lot of people. You know, obviously it is really, really important there. Is Gasly now finally starting to make some moves? He's got a pass done on Lewis Hamilton. Has he done a Fernando Alonso? Yes, he has. Pierre Gasly there down the inside of Hamilton at the turn 9, turn 10 complex. And that was one of the other underappreciated, under-noticed things, I think, from this year's game. You actually now, so obviously when you're watching an action replay, it actually picks out different cameras as well. That will hopefully give you the best idea as to what has happened there. So that time around, obviously, we got a good look from cockpit cam. Obviously, you'll notice other ones we've kind of seen from different perspectives as well. There is Gasly now trying to look around the outside of George Russell through the final corner and clean sailing around him. And we do get the DRS, though, so hopefully we're going to be able to pull away from George as we make our way back down in towards turn 1, and maybe we can leave those Mercedes to squabble out with each other. But now we've got both cars just outside of the points there. As you can see, Hamilton thought about it, but couldn't quite make the move stick. If we can just bring Gasly a little bit closer to those cars in front of him, then, I mean, if we can get 2 of us fighting against Daniel Ricciardo for that final point, then I would like to believe in the team's overall performance there, as Russell again just making the move around the outside, and actually a bit of contact that time round between him and Gasly. So Gasly not very happy in that incident, and I believe is gonna have some front wing damage as well there. So a nightmare for Pierre, so we're gonna have to box him a little bit early, and immediately our plan to try and get him closer to Albon and Ricciardo is going to go into the bin. So we're going to have to get him to dive into the pit lane then at the end of the lap. Yuki Tsunoda does the same thing. So a bit of an earlier stop there from Yuki than I was expecting. But here we go, our first ever pit stop inside F1 Manager 24. I want to try and take a look at it from cockpit camera. You know, I just think it would be obviously be quite a cool little camera sweep there, as you can see. Obviously, being the newest team on the grid, we are right down the far end of the pit lane, which does come with its perks under safety cars and things like that. So there we go, new wing going on. Don't really get a particularly great view of it all. But finally then, Gasly is going to drop the hammer, and let's get back out onto the circuit then. He's still going to be out ahead of Magnussen and Bottas here, who I think both have had their own separate issues early on in this race, but Albon now ahead of Fernando Alonso, who has also made his first pit stop of the afternoon then. So a strategy just coming into things as we get past 1/4 distance. Albon actually able to keep up with Sir Lance here. So we're going to try and box him in onto a fresh set of the soft compound tyres. We're going to split our strategies just a little bit. Get Gasly to go a little bit longer and get Albon just to try and come in and go for kind of the default strategy here. Like I said, tyre wear inside F1 Manager is always actually very, very extreme. You know, you can make up a lot of time by making an extra pit stop late on in a GP or things like that. So that's going to be what we have to be really careful of on this game, you know, when the AI try it, and of course also making sure that we try to utilise it to our advantage wherever possible. Good clean stop there, 2.8 seconds. It's not bad going for Alex Albon here, as unfortunately he's just going to get caught out behind the two V-Carb cars as they make their way back down in towards turn 1. So I think Tsunoda struggling a bit more, perhaps used a bit too much of his tyres early on in the GP, and as you can hear, other teams as well making their pit stops. So Gasly's going to be back up then into P14. So he's not doing too bad of a job early on, but he has obviously just got to try and stay out of trouble and keep his former teammate Esteban Ocon out of the DRS range as well there. As we just slowly make our way through this Grand Prix, though, you see Verstappen with a 17-second lead early on. That is absolutely mental and, well, pretty realistic. I can't argue against it either. As Gasly there loses the spot out to George Russell as well. So we're starting to see a bit more movement then in this Grand Prix, as maybe cars that struggled in qualifying but are a bit better in the race. Yeah, Gasly clearly, I think, getting in his own head a little bit too much at this stage of the race. It was a pretty simple DRS pass. Russell was a bit robust with the move on the exit. Kind of forced Pierre out over the curbing. But I guess it is what it is there. And yeah, Gasly, I think, you know, he's obviously on the mediums. A lot of drivers have opted for another set of the softs. So hopefully he's going to be able to come back stronger towards the end of the race. But he's losing a lot of time at this stage of the afternoon there, as most drivers now have made a pit stop. So we'll continue trying to just make our way a little bit further forward there, as Norris now dives into the pit lane. He's going to be out comfortably ahead of ourselves. And you can see, yeah, he's going to come out just alongside his teammate Oscar Piastri. So we got V-Carbs battling, we got McLaren's battling, maybe even Ferrari's battling as well a little bit further up the road. But teammate battles seem to be the key so far this weekend, as, yeah, just fast-forwarding a little bit more. We've still got Lance Stroll annoyingly perched on our shoulder as he's going to make the move, but Albon is immediately going to switch back past him once again then. So, of course, yeah, as the races start to calm down sometime, you know, you kind of just want to let the game play things out and obviously sort of see what's going on there, see how your tyre wear is in comparison to others, and kind of, you know, work out as well, you know, is tyre wear your strong point on this game? Are you going to have to go with more aggressive strategies to get the car where you want it up the order there, as Albon's still desperately hanging on with Lance Stroll for that final points-paying position? As, yeah, really, you know, most people just kind of in a calm little position in this Grand Prix. Gasly pulls away from Stanek, who I think made a little bit of an error in the process, down the inside at turn 11. And yeah, you can see, I think Stanek there just ran a little bit wide on the exit of the corner, and potentially costing himself just a little bit of extra time at this stage. So Ricciardo has a bit of a lock-up as well, so that's not going to do his tyres any favours, as losing the place to, I believe that's Lando Norris, isn't it? And yep, just gets a little bit thrown off with that McLaren on his inside. Will get back on the road though, and not lose too much time in the process as well. But it will have damaged his tyres, so we might have to see Ricciardo diving back in for a slightly earlier stop than he originally, I'm sure, would have liked there. As yeah, you can see Stroll though just starting to pull away from us just a little bit late on in this race. Carlos Sainz now, again, another driver locking up at turn 11, so not really one that we associate with being a problem corner IRL, but clearly the AI having problems with it today. Maybe we're getting strong gusts of wind or something like that down into that corner, and that is throwing the AI off as we, well, we're actually now over half distance then in this race, so I don't think it's going to be long before we see cars into the pit lane. In fact, we're going to try and make Alex Albon box again. So he's going to try and go onto a 3-stop strategy. We're going to try and drag Pierre back in simply by just going a bit longer and trying to follow a more orthodox call. But yeah, with Albon, you know, we're kind of trying to find out some information as well. So we're going to try and go a bit more extreme. Push on a set of the softs again for about another 15 laps or so, and then go mediums to the end of the GP. I mean, if we get a safety car now, then we are in big trouble. But, you know, it's a risk I'm willing to take. And hopefully he's still going to be out ahead of Pierre. Yes, he will. So that's good as well. And maybe, just maybe, we can try and drag Pierre Gasly along a little bit over the next few laps as well. If he can get in the DRS range, obviously you can just try and hang within there as tyre temperatures as well. I've noticed on the outlaps they do make quite the difference, which is certainly a pretty cool thing to see as well then. But yeah, we're just kind of, you know, settling in. I think at the moment it's not looking like points are going to be possible. Maybe qualifying pace was our strong one of the weekend there, which would be a little bit of a shame. I would love to try and score some points in our very first race there, as Albon, you can see, making the move up the inside of one of the Mercedes. I believe that's Hamilton, who, yeah, is absolutely having a weekend to forget at the moment there. But as we slowly move further and further in, Bottas making a mistake down at that turn 11 as well. Sainz new fast lap of the Grand Prix, so clearly he's just recently boxed again, as Albon now has moved back up inside that top 10, but that's by courtesy of Tsunoda pitting, and Tsunoda's going to the end of the GP, so we're going to have to try and still basically make up an entire pit stop on the VCARB car before the end of the afternoon, so that's going to be really, really interesting to obviously see if Alex Albon can make that happen towards the end of the GP as well there. So strategy is really coming into it. It's going to be quite interesting to kind of see as to what everyone is planning. As Gasly now, can he go to the end? We might try and stretch Gasly to the end on that set of the soft compounded tyres here. We'll kind of see, you know, he's in a little bit of no man's land. I don't think he's going to score points unless we get a safety car anyway. So you may as well just try and see what he can do there. As luckily, I mean, it shows you how much in no man's land Pierre Gasly is. He didn't even lose a place under that under that pit stop either. He's just P14. He can't do anything more. He seemingly can't do much less either. As you can see, yeah, more and more drivers into the pit lane. Daniel Ricciardo, so we should have a chance to beat him, obviously, if we're quick towards the end of this race. As Albon back up into the lofty heights of P7 here, as Oscar Piastri running into a pit stop issue. Let's take a look what happened to Oscar. The team just hugging the car, apparently, in that instant there. So yeah, Oscar Piastri losing out a little bit. Losing out a little bit more time that I'm sure he would have wanted. But yeah, Albon still needs to go aggressive in towards these final 20 laps, because of course he's not going to have that big of an offset to the AI here either. As Gasly, yeah, he's got some breathing room from the likes of Zhou Guanyu as well, just behind him. So yeah, Gasly, he's P13 now. He's ahead of Hamilton. Maybe he can beat out those Mercs by the end of the race. But yeah, Albon, you can see now coming under more and more pressure from some of those quicker cars. Oscar Piastri once again trying to get back around him. But if we can hold these guys up for as long as possible, then hopefully we can try and make something happen towards the end of the race. We've only got 18 laps to go, so we're going to box him onto a completely fresh set of the medium tyres there. As Albon, you've got the option, of course, to box either this lap or next lap, depending on what the AI do as well. So that's pretty cool as well. And you can see, yeah, now we've dropped out the range of Oscar Piastri. Now we've lost out to Yuki Tsunoda as well. We can't seemingly keep up with these cars, so we're going to dive into the pit lane as soon as possible. There is Lando Norris in for yet another pit stop in this Grand Prix, but he's going to be clear further up the road there. And I'd actually messed it up. Albon, I thought it was going to be this lap he'd dive in, but apparently not, so he's probably going to lose the pace to Lance Stroll as well. And yeah, we have got our work cut out towards the end of the race, because we basically need to take a pit stop out of these guys if we want to try and score points here as we make our way back in. Though Daniel Ricciardo is a bit further back, so we might actually be close to him than I'd originally anticipated here. As 2.6 seconds stop, the team getting better and better with those pit stops. And yeah, Ricciardo's going to re-emerge ahead of us then. We're ahead safely of Russell and Hamilton, who are still outside the points. So Albon's got to try and make up 5 seconds inside the final 15 laps then of this GP, which is certainly, you know, you like to believe is going to be doable here, especially with those fresher tyres as well. As you can see, Ricciardo, though, is setting good lap times as we're starting to deal with a few blue flags even as well for some of the slower cars. So I've noticed as well, though, Max Verstappen is about to lap Pierre Gasly in this Grand Prix. So clearly, yeah, Red Bull still all-conquering at the front of the field. So we're going to throw caution to the wind, and we're going to dive Pierre Gasly into the pit lane once again, because he's not really going to be able to do a lot otherwise towards the end of the race. So we might as well just go for some glory runs, and he's going to lose time getting lapped anyway by those two Red Bull cars there. But Albon then, taking a look, he's actually fallen back into the clutches of George Russell slightly. So he might be dragging George Russell along here a bit. As Albon now trying to go defensive from the Mercedes. He's not really got any battery to make anything happen though. So Russell will go back around the outside at turn 1. And this is not what we need late on in the day. I'm just wondering though whether Ricciardo and Russell are going to be able to get ahead, or whether they're going to be able to get their tyres to the end of the GP as well. So that's going to be interesting to see, as we can't really do anything about George at the moment. He's kind of just hanging around us towards the end of the race here, and really not allowing to get away from him. And obviously, whether we can try and drag him up to Ricciardo, I don't know, because they tend to fight each other into the corners, which is a bit of a problem here. Gasly, it's turning into a race to forget. Down to P15. He should be able to get back past Stanek before the end of this race. Maybe he can get Lewis Hamilton, but I'm certainly not holding my breath here. Is actually looking at the pace. Russell and Albon both gaining time on Daniel Ricciardo late on here. So there's still the opportunity that we're going to be able to do something. I was kind of just hoping at this point, though, that we're not going to get lapped by Verstappen, but I think that's probably quite optimistic with the fact he's only a few seconds behind us. But yeah, that gap coming down to Ricciardo, still floating at about 4 seconds. But, you know, on the laps that we're not battling with George, we have actually got an opportunity here. As the other one to watch out for is going to be Gasly with Lewis Hamilton a little bit further back there. Gasly's basically just going to absolutely shred those tyres to pieces towards the end of the races. Once again, so close to getting Russell out of the range. And Albon as well. Then we're going to try and throw him aggressively with those tyres towards the end of the afternoon there. We've got Russell out of the range now, though, at last. So hopefully we're going to be able to try and close in on Daniel Ricciardo here, as Verstappen still closing in with less than 10 laps to go here, as Ricciardo's actually taking time out of Yuki Tsunoda as well. So we're all kind of converging on each other, as Oscar Piastri in for another pit stop here. So are we going to get out ahead of the McLaren driver? So clearly AI not afraid to box very late in the Grand Prix, and I believe we are just about. So Albon back into the points then for the first time in a little while. He's still got the pace over Danny Rick as well. So we're going to set his overtake aggression to high and hopefully make the move then on Danny Rick, and maybe leave the two Australians to battle it out with each other. Round the outside we'll go, and move similar to what Gasly did early on. And a beautiful move made by Alexander Albon there, and back up into P9 of the GP. So we've also got to factor in, of course, that we're probably, I think, still definitely going to get lapped by the end of this. So is it worth trying to go a lap under on fuel? I don't know whether you can risk that. Gasly, he's taken so much time at Hamilton as well. A little bit further up. So I think we should definitely score points with at least Alex Albon here. But of course we've got to try and manage as well, make sure that Ricciardo gets out of the range, and maybe those two can battle with each other. Again, there is just using a splash of battery down the back straight. You have got to micromanage things a bit still on this game as well there. But yeah, handful of laps to go then, as we just simulate forward just a little bit more. I think Piastri is going to make the move on Danny Rick, and he's pretty much immediately going to close in on the back of us. So yeah, Piastri there. Are we going to try and use him to try and get a bit closer to Tsunoda? As Piastri, new fast lap of the day. So clearly Red Bull have got the better race pace, but everyone else can match them on a fresh set of the tyres there. So what is the gap to Tsunoda towards the end? We went nearly 2 seconds faster on that lap, so surely we can try and get close to Yuki before the end of the race. The gap now down to just 4 seconds here, and I would certainly like it if we could beat out both of those V-Carb cars. As Piastri makes the move, and are we going to be even closer? Yuki now trying to latch onto the back of that McLaren driver, so Yuki's actually doing a really, really good job with this. So I wonder if he sacrificed a bit of pace in anticipation of that happening, as Albon, he's just floating, a second and a half away right towards the end of this race. And actually you can see now Yuki drops out of that range, so we're going to get straight back in it. So we've got yellow flags out. Someone's ran into problems. Don't quite know who that is. Logan Sargent with a spin down at turn 14. So final corner, just makes his way through and just loops it around as he tries to get back on the throttle. reminiscent of what Jack Aitken did in his sole F1 entry. And now, yeah, Albon tucked up in the wheel tracks to Tsunoda. 3 laps to go of this Grand Prix. Are we going to be able to make anything happen with Yuki Tsunoda here? We've got so much more straight line speed as we make our way back in towards turn 1. Down the inside, we're going to go and will be able to pull off the move. We're on fresher tyres still, but they are taking an absolute beating towards the end of this race. And now we've got to try and deploy and get Yuki out of the range as well there. So I don't think... Yeah, Yuki was able to keep hold of the DRS though. So let us by before the detection point. So we've got to really try and fly through this middle sector then. As you can see, making our way down in towards the S's. That gap 6/10 can we get? If we can get it up over a second, then I think we should be safe before the next DRS zone. There is 0.8 of a second. A little bit of a mistake there by Albon, but it'll get good traction on the exit of the corner. And there we go, Tsunoda. A second back now, so that's really important. And like I said, you know, it is those little moments that will make all the difference in these races as well. There is Albon happy with the move, and hopefully now, as we head towards the end of this Grand Prix, you can see Tsunoda dropping back ever so slightly. Is Verstappen going to lap us, though, before the end? I guess that's the other question, because he is right still behind us. Actually hasn't made much progress towards the end of the day. Yeah, he has got a 30-second lead, though. So I don't think he's too worried about that either towards the end of this one. As Verstappen onto the final lap, then, of this GP, you can see Albon now is just ahead of him here as we make our way up in towards the final couple of quarters, and Albon actually lets him by on the run to the line there as Verstappen snatches fastest lap on the final lap of the day as well. And you can see, yeah, if we take a look from the race winner's POV, Albon, yep, lets him by on the run up towards the finish line there. So we didn't even get to complete all 57 laps. So I don't know, obviously, whether you could be a little bit more strategic with that. And unfortunately means, obviously, even if someone had a problem in front of us, we're not going to get the chance to beat them there. But it was Verstappen ahead of Perez in the end, both Ferraris 3rd and 4th. Alonso, his early pace he couldn't hang on with.
Pretty well for Alex Albon today.
It was a really good drive. A nice finish in the points. I imagine the team will be very happy with that.
Well, Max Verstappen can add yet another podium to his already impressive record.
That gives them their first win of the season, and it was really well deserved.
And we've certainly kicked things off in style here at the Bahrain Grand Prix. Well, Karun, how do you think they'll be feeling in the team garage at the end of that?
Well, it was a bit of a mixed bag here. Some things went their way, but others didn't. I think their main target now will be finding some consistency for sure.
And that is about...
Well, there we go then. Unfortunately, yeah, the music was actually removed, obviously, because it's copyright claimed. So they didn't actually feature the music inside this version of the game for us. So apologies, it might have felt a little bit kind of empty at the end of the day there. But there we go, our very first race of F1 Manager 24. I hope you guys have enjoyed this deep dive. Lando Norris, fastest pit stop of the day even, I should say. So you do get to keep track of the DHL fastest lap and pit stops award as well. Fun little competitions you can add into the game. And you can see we did get one of our performance bonuses from Albon's point of view. And unfortunately, we actually lost out on the contract bonuses. I don't know how, though, because we definitely finished 20th or higher with both drivers as well. But yeah, thank you all so much for watching this video. Once again, if you've got any questions, please make sure you leave them down in the comments below. We've got one more video where we're going to be doing a Red Bull Max Verstappen challenge as well, where we're going to try and blow up the Red Bull car. And yeah, we'll be back very soon with more F1 Manager content.